So let's head back to the Constitutional Court in Johannesburg, where we are expecting to hear that ruling on the constitutionality of the Executive Ethics Code. We know that that ruling now has been made. Let's bring in our reporter, Canny Maphanga. Canny, a good morning to you. What are we hearing out of the ConCourt this morning?
Well, good morning to you and the viewers at home. Well, essentially what I can give you now following the judgment that was delivered this morning is that the Constitutional Court has confirmed the order of the High Court declaring the code, the Executive Ethics Code rather, unconstitutional, unlawful and invalid insofar as it does not require the disclosure by members who are subject to the code of donations made to campaigns for their elections to positions within political parties. The President has been given about 12 months to remedy this inconsistency in the code. To react to this judgment, I have the applicant in the matter, the Executive Director of the AmaBhungane Center for Investigative Journalism, Mr. Sam Sole, joining us right now to give us a quick reaction. It's yet another victory for AmaBhungane regarding the constitutional validity of certain legislation here in the ConCourt. What is your reaction to the ConCourt's decision?
We're very happy about this. It's part of our campaign for accountability and transparency, and I think in our politics that's particularly important. And in terms of the influence of money in our politics, it was vital, and we're very happy that the Constitutional Court recognized that and agreed with us, and is going to make it necessary even for internal party campaigns for those the funding of those campaigns to be disclosed.
Now, help us understand, politicians try to separate the two, members of executive versus political party campaigns, and almost being ignorant to what happens to those campaigns and not being influenced by that. What was your reason to say that no, the two could not be separated, the issues?
Look, I think the case involving President Ramaphosa was a fantastic test case. Because we saw in that campaign how much money was spent to win the position as ANC president, and therefore probably become national president. And what President Ramaphosa did quite properly was he set up a separate trust that he did not control, that controlled the money for his campaign. It was for not only for him, but for a slate of candidates that supported him. And in the High Court previously, the President's lawyers argued that that meant it didn't fall under the code. And in fact, when the matter went to the Constitutional Court agreed with that interpretation of the code. But now they've said, because the code is narrower than the Act, and because the code is narrower than what is demanded by our Constitution, it is invalid to that extent. So they've closed that loophole whereby you can set up a separate thing. Instead of the money going into your account for your campaign, if you set up something different, a trust, previously, as the President argued, that would exclude you from the purview of the code. And they said that's not good enough under the Act. The code must be changed to include any benefit, any financial benefit, even indirect benefit in that case.
And not to conflate the issues, is it correct to state that AmaBhungane, the Center for Investigative Journalism, was not looking for disclosure, particularly with CR17, but rather in the future to curb potential corruption in the form of kickbacks to businesses working with the state? Is this what the case is about? Was it rather about the principle for AmaBhungane?
Exactly, it was about the principle. Look, we didn't think that there was a particularly strong case to argue that the President should have done it, because there was a lot of lack of clarity about how this should be interpreted. We knew that, for instance, there was an investigation in Parliament about the internal funding for Mmusi Maimane when he contested the leadership of the DA. And Parliament itself, the Parliamentary Committee, had felt that the code did not cover that. So we thought, in terms of retrospective effect, in terms of saying the President did something wrong, that would have been a weak case and we would have lost that. That's why we went for going forward, this should be changed, the way the system operates at present is not good enough, and the court agreed with us.
And given the fact that they've given the president 12 months to remedy this, as you know, the 2024 elections are looming. Various political parties are consolidating their leadership positions. It's not going to have much of an effect, do you agree, at this stage with respect to transparency, or do you disagree in the form of holding politicians accountable for the donations that they receive in their internal campaigns?
Look, I think it's already had an effect. When we came back to this court to confirm the High Court position, the President didn't oppose it. And in fact, the ANC has adopted a position now that the funding for the current round of internal campaigning should be disclosed. That's an ANC rule, it's not a national rule, but I think they recognize that the arguments that we made, which have now been confirmed, are the correct ones. So all parties are going to have to follow that. And I think it is also going to make parties widen the scope, because at the moment this only applies to members of the executive, and if a member of the executive competes with somebody from the outside, that person, as things stand, would not be covered by the executive code, and that would be unfair. So I think there'll be a lot of impetus for the parties to enact legislation which will close that loophole as well.
Yes. And what about apprehensions from some parties to donate now that the process is going to be a lot more transparent?
Well, I think we've seen in terms of the Political Party Funding Act, the transparency that has come in has made a lot of people much more reluctant to donate. So I think it is going to be more difficult for people to raise lots of money, and I think that's probably a good thing for our democracy.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was Mr. Sam Sole, the Executive Director of the AmaBhungane Center for Investigative Journalism, just giving us a quick reaction where transparency and disclosure will be essential now with politicians and their internal political party campaigns. Over to you in studio.